Well, I'm off to Miami. You just try your best with the housework and childcare, okay?
The husband, suitcase in hand, said this to me with a laugh as he was about to leave for a 3-day, 2-night trip to Miami. From his eager departure, it was clear that this trip was not a solo journey or one with friends. It was an affair trip. That's because he had recently admitted to cheating on me. When I confronted him about having an affair, he readily admitted it and showed an unapologetic attitude. He demanded that I manage childcare alone while he neglected our family for his affairs. Occasionally, he would come home and criticize the way I did the housework.
Hey, don't slack off. Make sure you wipe down every corner. Man, you really are a terrible wife.
Each time he yelled, my heart wore down a little more. I wasn't just overwhelmed with childcare and housework, I was also working. I didn't have the time or energy to meet his standards for housekeeping. Exhausted by this daily life, I grew thinner each day. Despite my hesitations about divorce, a certain incident helped me make up my mind, and I finally decided to divorce him in my heart. Let's say goodbye to these days. With that thought, I started preparing for the divorce. During this time, my husband went on his affair trip. Seeing it as an opportunity, I wondered if there was anything that could help me in the divorce and stepped into his room. Immediately upon opening the door, I saw his discarded suit and a piece of paper that had fallen out. Drawn to it, I found it was a filled-out divorce form. Filled with joy and excitement, my heart raced. You mean to file this? All right. I fist-pumped, quickly filled out my part, and ran to the government office. While running, I muttered to myself, and just watch, I'm no longer just a woman who does whatever that man says. My name is Nicole. I am 47 years old and the head of sales at a trading company. I have a husband, Patrick, who is 2 years younger than me, but until I met him, my life was devoid of romance. I never really dated men during my school years. I was focused on my studies. I graduated from a prestigious university in Boston and joined my current company as a fresh graduate. I worked hard, and being recognized as the fastest rising star among my peers was incredibly satisfying. And so I threw myself even more into my work. In the midst of this work-centered life, there was no chance for a romance. However, I had always had a strong desire to marry, perhaps even stronger than most people. Raised by kind parents, I wanted to marry a gentle man like my father and become a reliable and kind mother like my mother. I imagined having at least one child. Ideally, two. But lacking confidence in my looks and being shy around the opposite gender, I was not proactive in seeking relationships. The fact that I attended girls' schools for both high school and university was a major reason for my lack of romantic experience. I was content with my fulfilling days and had no real complaints about my life. Yet I vaguely hoped to marry someday. Then, a turning point came. Just after I turned 33, something unexpected was said to me by a manager at a client company.
Nicole, this may be rather forward, but do you currently have a boyfriend?
Surprised by such a question, I tried to remain calm as I answered. No, I don't. Embarrassingly, I've never really been involved in romance. The client manager smiled happily.
That's good to hear. Actually, I have someone I'd like you to meet. Would you mind meeting him just once?
Oh, really? Are you sure I'm suitable? And who is this person? While flustered, I asked back.
I'd like you to meet my brother. He wants to settle down but hasn't found the right person yet. I think your gentle demeanor and his are quite similar, and you two might get along well. What do you think? Just a casual meal to start.
Ah, I see. I hesitated for a moment, but then thought that such a chance might never come again, so I agreed to the meeting. Later, I went for a meal with the client manager's brother, Patrick.
Hello, my name is Patrick. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
My name is Nicole. Thank you as well, and I look forward to spending time with you today. Patrick was 2 years my junior, but he was very poised and had a dignified appearance. He worked as a salesperson at a food manufacturer. We hit it off, talking about our jobs and hobbies, and time flew by. I took a liking to Patrick, and he seemed to like me as well. We continued to meet and naturally progressed to dating. We went on dates to aquariums, zoos, planetariums, firework festivals, and traveled to countless places. After 2 years of dating when I was 35, Patrick and I got married. Patrick's brother, the client manager, celebrated our marriage grandly. Patrick became my husband, and the client manager became my brother-in-law. Patrick and I had 2 daughters, now aged 12 and 10. They are wonderful children, and I cherish every day with them, considering meeting them the greatest joy of my life. Just one thing weighs heavily on me. It's about Patrick. While we were dating, Patrick was so kind, and his behavior began to change around the time our second daughter was conceived. It started with him belittling my appearance.
Hey, don't get all fat. You're a woman. You should keep your figure.
I'm pregnant, so it's natural for my body to change a bit. Why would you say that? Even when I expressed my displeasure, it seemed to have no effect on Patrick, and he only ridiculed me more.
You were passable when you were thin, despite your ugly face. But now there's nothing good left if you get fat.
I was at a loss for words by his cruel remarks. He had never said such things when I was pregnant with our first daughter. What happened to Patrick? I couldn't help but doubt if the man before me was really Patrick, and I stared at him intently.
What? What are you looking at? And by the way, are you even cleaning properly? I can't relax in this living room. Clean up now.
Indeed, the living room had a few toys left by our eldest daughter. However, I couldn't accept being spoken to so harshly. Hey, there's no need to speak to me like that. I'm desperately managing both work and childcare every day. If you have complaints, why don't you help out a bit? Yes, from that time on, Patrick completely stopped doing any housework or childcare, leaving everything to me.
I'm tired from work. You're on reduced hours, so you have it easier than me. That's why you should be doing everything.
Indeed, I was using the company's reduced hours system to leave an hour earlier than usual. Thus, I could come home earlier than Patrick, but managing the daycare pickup and drop-off for our eldest daughter while pregnant was not easy feat. It's not easy at all. For 10 years, Patrick did not help with housework or childcare at all. While Patrick and I often argued, he never directed his frustrations towards the children and always treated them kindly. Thus, although the thought of divorce crossed my mind, I had not yet taken any steps towards it until now. Then one day, something shocking happened. During lunch break at work, a close coworker invited me to an Italian restaurant outside the office. My coworker seemed hesitant to bring it up. I've been wondering whether to tell you this, but I thought it's better if you know. Saying this, my coworker opened their smartphone and showed me a photo. What is this? I let out a gasp, close to a scream as I stared at the photo. Yeah, that's Patrick, right? Do you recognize the woman next to him? The photo showed Patrick holding hands with a young woman as they were about to enter a hotel. It was undoubtedly evidence of his affair. In a voice as faint as a mosquito's, I told my coworker that I had no idea who the young woman was. I see. This photo was taken last Friday night. I spotted Patrick in the downtown area holding hands with an unfamiliar woman, and they seemed suspicious, so I followed them for a bit, and they went into a hotel. I see. I said this and then fell silent before telling my coworker. Thank you for telling me. Can you send this photo to my phone too? After receiving the photo as evidence of the affair, I decided to confront Patrick about it. That night, after the children had gone to bed, I started the conversation with Patrick in the living room. Patrick, what is this all about? Have you been cheating? I asked him in a subdued voice so as not to wake the children, but my voice trembled with anger. Patrick stared at the photo for 3 seconds before yelling.
What? Why do you have this?
Keep your voice down, please. I hurriedly admonished him, but Patrick sighed in annoyance. His expression showed no sign of remorse.
So it's come out, huh? Well, whatever. Now that you know, I can go on dates with Mandy openly.
What? I was taken aback by Patrick's flippant remark. What kind of thought process did this man have?
Mandy is a new employee at my company, really cute, and a cute girl. Quite different from an old hag like you.
So you admit to the affair?
I admit it. Mandy and I are in love. But hey, it can't be helped, right? Men are creatures who cheat. But don't nag too much. If we end up divorcing, you'll be in trouble too, right?
Patrick told me this with a smirk on his face. His face was truly repulsive. Then, as if to end the conversation, he quickly retreated to his room. I followed Patrick and said, "Hey, we're not done talking," but Patrick showed no response to my words. How insincere. Anger almost overwhelmed me, but I felt that saying anything more to Patrick would be futile, so I returned to my room as well. Since then, Patrick has become more brazen, coming home later and later. Not only did he come home late, but he also started staying out until morning, completely neglecting his family. Occasionally, when he did come home, he would nitpick my housework and call me a terrible wife. Every time I heard Patrick's yelling, I felt my heart erode a bit more. I became increasingly worn out from work, housekeeping, childcare, and stress from Patrick. I did consider divorce, but I wondered if it was right to take the children's father away from them, leading to days without a clear decision. During this time, I had a chance to meet my brother-in-law, a department manager at a client company. My brother-in-law noticed my pale complexion after we finished talking about work and started the conversation with this.
"Nicole, what's wrong? You seem unwell. Are you sleeping well?"
No, I'm okay." And convinced by my response, my brother-in-law tilted his head.
"You don't look okay. If something is bothering you, feel free to talk. I'm your brother-in-law and family, after all."
I felt warmed by his words. Then I decided to take a leap and talk about Patrick, about his affair, his disregard for our family, and my thoughts on divorce. However, my brother-in-law furrowed his brow and said something unexpected.
"Oh, come on. Divorce sounds too drastic. A man's infidelity here or there, just overlook it a bit. Nicole, you've aged quite a bit and become an old lady, so Patrick probably just wants to have fun with other girls sometimes. Try to understand Patrick's feelings too."
What? His words shattered the slight hope I had that he would understand and offer supportive advice. I was stunned. What is this person in front of me saying? How could he say I should consider Patrick's feelings? Probably my brother-in-law loves his brother Patrick too much. There have been moments when I felt their brotherly love before, but I never imagined it to this extent. He had spoken sweetly about family earlier, but hearing him now, taking Patrick's side, I felt deeply disappointed.
"Look, Patrick is trying hard in his own way. Please, don't divorce. It would be sad to see a blemish on Patrick's family register."
But it might be difficult to stay together after being cheated on. My brother-in-law half smiled as he responded.
"Really? But Nicole, if you divorce Patrick, do you think you'll ever get married again? At your age, with 2 kids, I doubt there's a man who would marry you. Wouldn't that be sad for the kids? You know, marriages go through all sorts of things, so just keep supporting Patrick."
He said this and walked away. I stood there, dazed for a while. Then I muttered to myself, "This is unbelievable." I had another issue I was thinking of consulting my brother-in-law about, but I felt it was right not to mention it. That night, another distressing event gnawed at my heart. A call came from my mother-in-law who lives nearby. Since losing my father-in-law 5 years ago, she has been living alone. "Hello, Nicole. I overheard something. Are you considering divorce over Patrick's little fling? Complaining about that seems like you're not very tolerant. As a mother, you need to be stronger." It seems my brother-in-law had talked to my mother-in-law. I sighed. Both my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were entirely on Patrick's side. I felt lonely and my heart felt cold. "You heard from Patrick's brother, I see." "I will think about what to do next, but please leave me alone for a while." I said just that and hung up the phone. The words from my mother-in-law, "As a mother, you need to be stronger," kept spinning in my head. For the sake of the children, perhaps I should wait until they are grown up before considering divorce. But the thought of continuing life like this for years made me feel engulfed in darkness. Then, at that moment, my children came to me and hugged me tightly, and my eldest daughter said something surprising. "Mom, why don't you divorce Dad?" "What? Why?" I tried to remain calm and asked back. "Because Dad hardly ever comes home, and when he does, he just yells at you. I really don't like him anymore." Then my younger daughter also said, "Right, I don't like Dad at all either. All we need is you, Mom. I had thought they were still too young, but it seems both had been observing Patrick and me closely. I had hesitated to consider divorce for the sake of the children, but hearing them say this, I finally resolved to go through with it. A father isn't good just by being there. There are fathers like Patrick who might be better off not being around. I finally understood that. I told them, "Thank you," with all my heart. I resolved to protect my children alone no matter what. After that, I acted quickly. I began looking for a new place to live and visited real estate agents. At that time, Patrick left on a trip.
Well, I'm off. Looking forward to Miami. Just keep doing the housework and taking care of the kids.
He left cheerfully, clearly on an affair trip. Thinking of divorce, I wondered if there was anything advantageous for me and entered Patrick's room. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Patrick's discarded suit. Then something fell out of the suit. Drawn to it, I found that it was a completed divorce form. My heart raced with joy. Is this asking to be filed? All right. I fist pumped, filled in my section immediately, and ran to the government office. Even as I ran to the office, my heart was clear and full of hope. I successfully filed the divorce papers and moved to a new house with the children. 3 days later, while I was at work as usual, an internal call came from the reception.
There is a gentleman here claiming to be your husband, Nicole.
Understood. I'll be right there. When I went to the lobby, there was Patrick with a pale face.
Nicole, did you really file that divorce paper without permission? I wasn't seriously planning to divorce. Hey, listen.
He said this half crying so loudly that people around us started looking our way. Unable to bear it anymore, I led Patrick to an unused conference room. Don't come to my workplace. It's a nuisance.
But you guys moved out and I didn't know where to find you. I'm asking if you filed that divorce form. What happened?
Patrick leaned forward desperately as he asked. Yes, I filed it, naturally. Your part was already perfectly filled out. It's as if you were asking me to file it. Upon hearing my answer, Patrick's face fell into despair.
What? How could you just file it without considering my opinion?
What are you talking about after you filled in the divorce form? Whether you meant it or not, the divorce is already finalized. I have no intention of retracting it, and we'll discuss division of assets and child support from here. Despite not listening, Patrick started to make excuses.
That divorce form was just something I prepared to please Mandy. I hid it in a suit I don't usually wear because I thought you might see it if it was in my bag. But I accidentally hid it in the suit I use regularly.
It seems the divorce form was just a prop to please his mistress.
Why did you have to find it? You really are an inflexible woman. That's why men don't approach you. Infidelity is a man's badge of honor.
Patrick irrationally lashed out at me. Stop saying nonsensical things. Why is it my fault? Also, there are plenty of men who do not cheat. Patrick, you don't seem to understand just how low you've stooped. I'm truly appalled.
Shut up, shut up! We're just taking a little break. It's your fault for becoming such an old woman. You have no charm as a woman.
I looked at Patrick with cold eyes as he ranted.
You should just listen to everything I say.
Fed up with Patrick's ridiculous statements, I decided to reveal a crucial fact. Did you know that your mistress Mandy is the daughter of your brother's boss?
What? My brother's boss's daughter?
Patrick's face turned pale once again. I had hired a detective agency to investigate his mistress right after seeing the infidelity photos shown by my coworker. It turned out that she was the daughter of my brother-in-law's boss.
What? What will happen if my brother finds out about this? Demotion?
While panicked, Patrick desperately tried to organize his thoughts. Well, it's not your brother who is at fault, but you, so it's unlikely he'll face any severe punishment, but it might affect his career prospects since his boss is quite fond of his daughter.
No, this is bad. Please don't tell my brother that I am having an affair with Mandy. Not just him, but no one else either. My brother is usually lenient with me, but he's really scary when he gets angry.
Patrick pleaded, and I coldly replied. Whether I disclose your affair or not depends on your future actions. Now, please leave. Oh, and I will be seeking compensation for your infidelity through a lawyer later. With that, I sent Patrick away. Later, I was summoned by my mother-in-law to the family home. I hesitated whether to go, but decided to face my mother-in-law and brother-in-law as I had things I wanted to discuss with them. Upon arriving at the family home, the atmosphere was heavy, and my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and Patrick were waiting for me. As soon as my mother-in-law saw me, she started to scold me. "Nicole, how could you file for divorce on your own? That's terrible. Please make up with Patrick. Who do you think allowed you to have children? It was Patrick, wasn't it? You should continue to be grateful to Patrick for the rest of your life." My brother-in-law echoed her sentiments. Angered, I firmly told both my mother-in-law and brother-in-law I have no intention of reconciling with Patrick. Then I confronted them with a fact that even Patrick didn't know. "Since I've divorced Patrick, I am now a stranger to you. Therefore, please return the $20,000 you both borrowed from me immediately."
What?
Patrick exclaimed in surprise. Yes, I had lent $10,000 each to my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. They both liked gambling and were financially struggling, so they had secretly borrowed money from me. "Please lend it to me secretly from Patrick. I'll definitely return it."
I'll definitely return it, please.
They had come to my house when Patrick was not around and begged me. At that time, being newly married, I wanted to maintain a good relationship with my family, so I lent them the money as they requested. However, they never showed any signs of intending to repay the debt. Now I regretted lending them money. My mother-in-law frantically argued, "That has nothing to do with it right now." And my brother-in-law also sweated.
I said I'd return it eventually. Why bring it up now?
"No, please repay it all at once. We are strangers now, and I can no longer wait." Realizing the gravity of the situation, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law turned to blaming Patrick. "Patrick, why did you have an affair? You had such a good wife. Nicole, apologize right now."
That's right, Patrick. It's all your fault. You should sincerely apologize to Nicole and try to reconcile. Come on, kneel down and apologize.
As they suddenly turned against Patrick, I was utterly dismayed. It was clear they were just trying to get their debt with me forgiven. Confused by their sudden shift, Patrick, though angered, retorted,
What are you two talking about? You've always been on my side. How can you suddenly say this? You both understood that infidelity is a man's nature. I only prepared that divorce form as a joke, and Nicole filed it without my consent. It's not my fault.
As the three of them started arguing, I realized I couldn't deal with them anymore and decided to expose everything. "By the way, Patrick's mistress is your boss's daughter, Mr. Brother-in-law. Her name is Mandy."
What? Is that true?
My brother-in-law was so surprised that he almost jumped up. Patrick's face turned pale and he was trembling. "It's true, I have proof." I showed the brother-in-law and my mother-in-law the photographic evidence and the detective agency's report. My brother-in-law's complexion grew increasingly worse as he stared at the documents.
What a disaster. To think he would go after Mandy. This could ruin my career if it gets out. I could be demoted. Patrick, what a foolish thing you've done.
"How is that so? Patrick, why on earth would you mess with such an important daughter?" My brother-in-law and mother-in-law continued to berate Patrick, and Patrick burst into tears, saying,
I didn't know either. If I had known she was my brother's boss's daughter, I wouldn't have touched her. That boss adores Mandy so much, he even has her picture on his desk. How are you going to take responsibility for this? Do you have any idea how much I've struggled to climb the career ladder, gritting my teeth and persevering?
My brother-in-law also began to cry, and the family home was in chaos. I sighed. Then I muttered, "Let's go home," and put the evidence of Patrick's affair back into my bag and headed for the entrance. On my way out, I addressed the three of them. "Mother-in-law, brother-in-law, I'm setting the deadline for the loan repayment at the end of this month. Please make sure to pay it back by then. Patrick, you'll soon receive a bill for the compensation, so make sure to pay it. I will take my leave now." With that, I left the family home. Their voices blaming each other echoed out to the front door. Later, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law managed to repay the money they had borrowed from me by the deadline. Patrick also paid the compensation in one lump sum, though it seems he had to take out loans to come up with the money. However, since the compensation bill was sent to Patrick's company, his affair became known at work, and he was demoted. The mistress, a new employee named Mandy, felt uncomfortable at the company and resigned. The incident revealed to Mandy's father, the boss of Patrick's brother, that his daughter and his subordinate's brother were having an affair, and he was furious. My brother-in-law's position worsened as the boss suspected him of knowing about the affair, and his relationship with me, a manager at a client company, also deteriorated, leading to his isolation at work. As expected, his prospects for promotion were cut off. Patrick was severely reprimanded by his brother and eventually banned from returning home, living a lonely life. Mandy quickly dumped him. I received just one voicemail from Patrick begging for a reconciliation. In it, his voice was as faint as a mosquito's.
Please reconcile with me. Being alone is too lonely.
It was clear he was desperate. Of course, I didn't return the call or sympathize. Patrick was mentally cornered, could not concentrate on his work, kept making mistakes, and was eventually fired. As for my mother-in-law, she continued to rely on her son's money and couldn't stop gambling. Eventually, both my brother-in-law and Patrick grew tired of her. My brother-in-law moved out of the family home, and Patrick lost contact. Thus, at nearly 70 years old, my mother-in-law had to start working to cover her living expenses and debts. Having been a housewife all her life, she was exhausted daily by the unfamiliar part-time job and was often scolded by much younger colleagues. I once passed by the lunchbox shop where my mother-in-law worked, and she was being scolded by a customer for some mistake. Meanwhile, I am living a happy life with my children. The children seem to have completely forgotten about their father, who had little involvement with them. Seeing their smiling faces every day, I feel truly glad that I divorced. For the sake of my children and myself, I am determined to continue living my best life.